Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to dive into a really fascinating question. How did a 2,000-year-old tradition of making secret codes, we're talking everything from ancient Rome to World War II, how did all of that suddenly just become obsolete? Let's find out.
And this, right here, is the central mystery we're unpacking. For centuries, you had this constant arms race between the code makers and the code breakers. Ciphers just kept getting more and more complex. So what changed? Why did this entire field of human ingenuity suddenly slam into a wall, forcing a complete revolution in how we think about security?
To really understand that dead end, we first have to appreciate the journey. This wasn't some sudden, out-of-the-blue failure. It was actually the final destination of a long and, frankly, brilliant history of human cleverness.
And that path was seriously impressive. We started with super simple stuff like the Caesar cipher way back in ancient Rome. Then we leaped forward to more complex ideas like the Vigenère cipher in the 16th century, which, by the way, people thought was literally unbreakable for ages. And by the 20th century, we had these incredible electromechanical beasts like the Enigma machine. Every single step was a huge leap in complexity. But despite all that innovation, they were all walking down the same path, straight towards the same fundamental, unbreachable wall.
So, what was this wall made of? Well, it turns out it wasn't just one single thing. It was a series of deep, foundational flaws in the very philosophy of classical cryptography. Think of them like cracks that were always there, just hidden, waiting for the right kind of pressure to completely shatter the whole structure. We can pretty much boil it all down to three fatal flaws. First, a really dangerous dependence on keeping the method secret. Second, the ghost of human language that just wouldn't go away, always haunting the encrypted message. And third, the simple fact that these ciphers were built on cleverness, not on provable math. So, let's break each one of these down. Okay, the first flaw is this idea called security through obscurity. A lot of these old systems only worked because the enemy didn't know how the cipher was designed. But what's the problem with that? Well, the second the method gets discovered, whether someone steals the plans or just figures it out, the entire system is toast, completely compromised. It's basically like hiding your key under the doormat. Yeah, it works, but only as long as nobody thinks to look there.
Now for the second flaw, and honestly this might be the most critical one of all. This quote really just gets right to the heart of it. See, classical ciphers were designed to hide the content of a message, but they were terrible at hiding the structure of the language underneath.
And this slide illustrates the problem perfectly. Even though every single letter is blacked out, you can still see things, right? You can see the length of the words. You can spot the short three-letter words that are probably things like V or AND. This is the exact weakness classical ciphers had. They changed the letters, but they left behind these statistical ghosts, giving codebreakers massive clues to work with.
And this leads us straight to the final core weakness. It wasn't just about the ciphers themselves, it was about how they were even created in the first place. They were all products of human intuition, of clever ideas and really cool mechanical designs.
The entire design philosophy was based on ingenuity. Some inventor would think up a really clever way to scramble letters, and hey, it seemed secure. But there was absolutely no way to prove it. There were zero mathematical guarantees. You basically just had to cross your fingers and hope that you were cleverer than your opponent, which, as you can imagine, is not a great foundation for security.
For hundreds of years, these flaws were just weaknesses that a really dedicated human analyst could maybe eventually exploit. But then, a new invention came along that didn't just exploit the cracks, it shattered the entire wall into a million pieces.
That invention, of course, was the computer. And this one single development fundamentally and forever changed the rules of the game. The slow, patient work of a human codebreaker was about to get accelerated beyond anyone's wildest dreams.
And this chart just brilliantly shows that shift. An attack that might take a whole team of humans hours or even days to pull off, like testing thousands of possible keys, a computer could suddenly do in minutes or even seconds. Brute force attacks, deep statistical analysis, it all became trivially easy. These old ciphers were simply never designed to withstand that kind of raw computational power.
Okay, so a really natural question comes up right about now. It's a doubt I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, and it's a super important one to tackle.
The question is this: if computers are the problem, why not just fight fire with fire? Why not just add more rotating wheels to the Enigma machine, or use ridiculously long keys, or just keep layering more and more ciphers on top of each other? Why not just make them more complex? The answer lies in this critical concept called false security. Simply making a weak system more complicated doesn't make it strong. All you're doing is building a bigger, more elaborate house on a crumbling foundation. Because those core flaws we talked about, the reliance on secrecy, the leaking patterns, the lack of mathematical proof, they're all still there, right at the bottom. Complexity without a strong foundation doesn't just fail to add security, it creates a dangerous illusion that you're safe when you're not. It became obvious that a whole new foundation had to be built from scratch.
So, with the old world of cryptography basically in ruins, what would the blueprints for this new foundation even look like? What principles would you use to create ciphers that could actually survive in the digital age?
Well, this new foundation really rested on three massive pillars. First, we needed systems that could scale up for global communication, not just military messages, but for everyone. Second, we needed a totally new standard of proof, formal security models that could mathematically guarantee a cipher's strength. And third, the security itself had to be based on problems that were so mathematically hard that even the fastest computers on Earth would choke on them.
This slide right here perfectly sums up the entire shift. The whole story is on this screen. We moved from intuition to mathematics. We went from relying on the secrecy of the algorithm to public designs where the only secret is the key. We went from fighting patterns to embracing true mathematical randomness. And, most importantly, we went from unproven cleverness to provable security. It was a complete and total paradigm shift.
Now, just a quick note here. The whole point of this explainer was to show why the old ways failed and why we desperately needed a new approach. We haven't really talked about specific modern algorithms like DES or RSA, and that's on purpose. Those are the heroes of the next chapter in this incredible story.
Ultimately, the failure of classical cryptography wasn't just a technical problem, it was a philosophical one. It taught us a huge lesson, that real, lasting security can't be built on clever tricks and secret methods. It has to be built on a foundation of pure, provable logic. Next, we move from intuition to mathematics.